Shalom Vayechi Chazak. Can you believe it? We already finished one Seder of the Torah. Next week we already move on to Parshas Shemois, Mitzrayim. And this week, before we get started with the shir, I would just like to mention our Poischim B'chvoid Achsanya, the Bikur Cholim of Lakewood, that has been hosting us for the last 8 or 9 years here at Bikur Cholim headquarters of Lakewood, is having a campaign to raise much needed funds. The amount of things that they do, I mean, just right here tonight we're giving the shir because they're having a whole call center and everything in our regular place of the shir. But tonight, just back here in the Bikur Cholim warehouse, looking at the medical equipment and all the other things that get shipped out of here to stock hospitals, pantries. The list of what they do very quietly is endless. And I would encourage everybody, if possible, when you get finished listening to the shir, I hope I'm going to post the link. And you have a tremendous chus if you could donate something to Bikur Cholim of Lakewood. Bikur Cholim of Lakewood, as you know, spreads its wings also to different places around the country. And we're talking New York City, the Mayo Clinic, Minneapolis, Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, and I'm sure I'm missing there are some other places around the country that they take responsibility for when, unfortunately, people have to be there for very serious things for Cholim, and Bikur Cholim doesn't know the word enough, and everything, every single thing, every detail is thought out, every detail is there. So once again, if you're able to, I encourage you to try to donate something to support this very worthy organization. And one thing about this week's Parsha, it really brings out the Nesivos Shalom. One of the themes of Nesivos Shalom that we always talk about is confidence and always being positive and always seeing that the Yeshua is right there, always seeing that no matter what you're going through, as a Klal Yisrael, no matter what we are going through, no matter what a person is going through, the Geula is always right there. And it so fits the Nesivos Shalom's personality that in this week, when we're just, Yaakov Avinu is in Mitzrayim, and Golos Mitzrayim is just starting, the Nesivos Shalom has an entire section on Geula. You know, we're just getting into Golos, and the Golos is just starting, but the Nesivos Shalom is delivering a message to us to let us know that the Geula is never far away. And when you're in Golos, when you're going through something that's tough, just know you have to start preparing for and understanding and learning about and preparing for the Geula, which is right around the corner. And the pasuk at the end of our parsha tells us something very interesting. So Yaakov Avinu is nifter, and Yaakov Avinu was taken up to Hebron to be buried there. And now the end of the parsha, Yosef is giving instructions before he is going to be nifter. And Yosef said, the pasuk tells us the following at the end of the parsha: Vayashba Yosef es bnei Yisrael leimor. Yosef, he swore to Bnei Yisrael, Pokoid Yivkoid Elikim Eschem. Double Lashon, Pokoid Yivkoid Elikim Eschem. Hashem is going to remember you, and a double remember. And when Hashem does, V'halisem es atmoisai mizeh, that when there is Gulas Mitzrayim, Yosef is saying, make sure to take me up. Literally my bones. And Yosef HaTzadik is saying, take me up and bury me also in Eretz Yisrael. And I just want to mention something outside the Nesivos Shalom, which I happened to heard today from a good friend of mine, Reb Simcha Hachbaum of Hebron, a Dvar Torah that he said today. And look at the contrast over here of Yaakov Avinu wanted to be buried instantly. As soon as he was nifter, he wanted to be taken up to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, Yosef did an amazing job. Yosef did more than even ask. He went personally and all of that. And for that, Yosef was rewarded with special shechem and all of that. But Yosef had different instructions. Yosef said that I'm going to stay here with you in Mitzrayim, even though he wasn't alive. But until you leave, I'm going to stay here. But when you do leave, and he was promising that that day is going to come, I want you to take me from here and bury me in Eretz Yisrael. So what Yosef is saying, Yosef is telling Klal Yisrael that the Golus is going to come to an end. And when it does, I want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. So the first thing that we need to ask on this pasuk is, as we mentioned, the double lashon, pakoi divkoi. Means remember. You don't remember to remember. Either you remember or you don't. So pakoi divkoi is an interesting lashon. And secondly, Nesivos Shalom asks about the promised geula. Yosef is promising that there will be a geula in general. And Chazal learn from the pasuk of, we say it in the Haggadah on Pesach, you'll know it, V'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim alayla ha'hua. Hashem is telling us that Hashem, He Himself, V'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim, Hashem Himself is going to perform the geula. Hashem is going to redeem us. And we know, lo yidei malach, lo yidei sorav, lo yidei shaliach, el HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chvoidoi u'b'yatzmai. Hashem Himself. And remember, we're just getting into Geula, so we have to know already how the Geula is going to happen. Hashem Himself is going to be the one to take us out. And so really, the question on that is, why, at that point, when you're in Geula for so long, would a malach could be a shliach of Hashem, and that would have gotten us out also. Why did it have to be that? Why wouldn't it be good enough if a malach or someone else took us out? At that point, you just want out. Right? So why did it have to be HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself? Kaviyachol. So the Nesivos Shalom, he elaborates with some insight on what is Geula. Let me tell you something about the Geula. It says in Nesivos Shalom. There's a pasuk that tells us about the Geula. It's a pasuk in the Navi. Ani Hashem be'ita achishena. Be'ita, that's telling us when the Geula, be'ita means in its right time. Achishena, I will hasten, I will bring it quicker, the Geula. So Be'ita is that set date. We all have to know, there's a set date when the Geula has to take place. There is a date, even though we're in Golus for almost 2,000 years now, today also, there is a date when the Geula has to take place. And it's not contingent on the way Klal Yisrael acts or behaves, does mitzvahs or not. There is a date that the Geula has to happen. And it was that date, actually, that Yaakov Avinu in our parsha, he wanted to reveal that date and then V'nistalko mimena shechina. Yaakov Avinu called his children together for Berachas Yaakov. Heyasu v'agida lachem. And Rashi tells us that the shechina went away. Yaakov was not able to say what that date, be'ita, the time that the geula must happen. But then the next word in the pasuk is be'ita achishena. I will hasten. The geula will come before its time. The Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadi Ches Amud Aleph tells us that if we are zoiche, that if we do mitzvahs and we do things right, then we are able to hasten the geula and bring that day closer. So the geula will be hastened. But the problem was that in Mitzrayim we had a real serious problem because neither of those was able to work. The set time wasn't reached yet. We know that the Golus Mitzrayim was supposed to be much longer. So they hadn't reached the time of the set date in Mitzrayim. And yet, we know that they were down, and when they were in Mitzrayim, they were down 49 levels of Tumah. They were on the last level of Tumah, so there was no getting out early. There was no Be'ita, because that was still a long way off that day. And there's no Achishena, because they were down in 49 levels of Tumah. They weren't doing the mitzvahs and the right things to hasten the Geula. But there was another problem. So what are we doing? There's no Be'ita, and there's no Achishena, and we need to get out of Mitzrayim. We can't stay in Mitzrayim any longer, because as we know, if they would have gone down one more level of Tumah, then Geula wouldn't have been possible. So they're about to fall into the 50th level of Tumah Mitzrayim, and once they got there would be no way out. So thereby, the Geula had to be done, something had to be done quickly, as we say, Bechi Pazayin. The Geula had to happen very quickly, and it had to be in a very, very special way also. So with that, Nesivos Shalom tells us a very, very important idea. That is when Hashem steps in. Hashem steps in, and He takes us out of the normal seder of the world that's set into motion on Rosh Hashanah. Hashem sets every year Rosh Hashanah what's going to happen for the next year. And I know today was the New Year's 2026, but we have our own Rosh Hashanah that happened a few months ago, right? On Rosh Hashanah, everything is set into motion. But only Hashem, who has great rachamim for us, like a father to a son, Hashem can make it work. And if it's an emergency, code 1, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's there on the spot to change things for us, to do what needs to be done. So what happens in this case? We're a little bit of a pickle, right? There's no Be'ita, there's no Achishena, and Klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim is about to fall into the 50th level of Tumah. What happens? What happens right now? The only Eitzah was to have a Geula with HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoidoi u'be'atzmai. That only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could change the Seder of the whole world and take us out of Mitzrayim, because all the rules are off. No Be'ita, no Achishena. What are we going to do right now? If we fall into the last level, we would have never had a Geulas Mitzrayim. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's why the Geula had to be HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoidoi u'be'atzmai. Not that a Malach wouldn't have been good enough. It wasn't possible. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be able to take us out of Mitzrayim. Think about, let's say, a king, right? A king in all his royal clothing. He sees his son, his child, the prince, falls into mud and he's sinking. So what does the king do? The king, he starts waiting for servants and the police squad come rescue him. No. The king himself jumps into the mud to save his son. Kaviyachol, that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu treats us in Klal Yisrael. That when we're in trouble and we need something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoidoi u'ba'atzmai comes in to save us. That's the idea of Geula, says Nesivos Shalom. All rules are off. So too with Bnei Yisrael. The pasuk in our pasha tells us, "Pakoid yifkoid elikim eschem." Yosef is telling us, just know that there are two types of remembering. There's pakoid and then there's yifkoid. One is there's a pakoid, through the regular seder of Be'ita and Achishena, the way the world was set up. But Yosef is telling us, the time's going to come in Mitzrayim, and we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in the 49th level of Tumah down there, and about to fall into the 50th. Yosef tells us, Pakoid is not going to be good enough, because the regular Seder is not going to work. Just understand that there's also a Yifkoid. There's more than that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should step in. So Yosef is telling us, Pakoid Yifkoid Elikim Eschem. You're going to think there's no way out. There is another Pekida. There's a way of going away from the regular way of the world. We go above Teva and Seder and Zman. And Geulas Mitzrayim would be that way. That Hashem could skip everything, and Hashem will do that for you if need be. And that's really a confidence builder for us today also. But Koid Yivkoid is a chizuk for us to know that we've gone through so much in Galus. And there's so many problems and so many things, and if the tzaddikim in general, people ask the tzaddikim in generations before us, Rishonim, Achronim, Goinim, all that, they couldn't bring Mashiach. How are we going to bring Mashiach? The idea is that every one of us has to do our job. We do our thing and just understand that Hashem is not going to ever forget about us. It's right around the corner. It's going to be right there. The Geula is right there. So now, when we just got into Mitzrayim, the Nesivos Shalom tells us we need to learn the lessons of how Geula is going to happen, and Geula is right around the corner. Everybody, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, Shabbos Chazak, we are ready for Geula.